between Australian Foreign and Defence Ministers and the United States Secretary of State and Secretary of State for Defence when we met in Melbourne in November 2010. We agreed that we would work closely with the United States on its Global Force Posture Review. And in September last year in San Francisco, we noted the progress that we had made, and when the President visited Australia in November last year, the Prime Minister and the President announced a range of initiatives. Firstly, that a United States Marine Task Force group would rotate out of Australian Army facilities in the Northern Territory, starting with 250 and growing over a period of time, over 5 or 6 years, to 2,500. The first of those 250 arrive early next month. Secondly, we agreed that we would see greater utilisation by United States Air Force of Australian Air Force bases in the Northern Territory, in Northern Australia, particularly RAF Darwin and RAF Tyndall. And thirdly, we agreed that as our third priority, we would look in the future to greater access by United States Navy of our Indian Ocean port, HMAS Stirling, in my own state of Western Australia. And they are the three priorities that we have been focusing on. Since the President's visit, we have focused on bedding down the arrangement so far as the first group of Marines is concerned. And indeed, last week, United States Assistant Secretary of State Kirk Campbell was in Canberra. I met with him, and our conversations focused on the success of the President's visit, the success of our announcement, and bedding down those arrangements and into the future, moving towards greater access so far as United States Navy and HMAS Stirling is concerned. Just a couple of points. Firstly, we don't have United States bases in Australia. We either have joint facilities such as Pine Gap, or we have access by United States Army, Navy and Air Force to our facilities. You've seen overnight the reporting and the suggestion of utilisation of Cocos Island. At the time of the President's visit, I made clear that Cocos Island was a long-term prospect. Cocos Island has not been the subject of detailed discussion by me with my counterparts, whether that's Secretary Gates in the past or Secretary Panetta. And so suggestions that we've had detailed discussions at my level about the utilisation of Cocos Island are not correct. We view Cocos as being potentially a long-term strategic location, but that is down the track. So I've made the point earlier today that people should not get ahead of themselves on this matter, whether they are commentators, whether they are officials. The focus of the Australian government and the focus of the Obama administration are in those three areas that I've referred to. The Marine Task Force Group in the Northern Territory, greater access to our Air Force bases in the Northern Territory, and subsequently greater utilisation of HMAS Stirling, our Indian Ocean port. Can I just make some remarks on another matter, and then I'm happy to respond to your questions. We saw in the last couple of days the terrible injury to an Australian AusAid worker, David Savage. Can I again express my condolences to his family and his friends for the injuries that he has suffered. He's been transferred to Germany for medical treatment. Overnight, his condition, I'm advised, has improved from serious but stable to satisfactory. So we hope that his condition continues to improve. But he, together with other civilian corps members, together with other AusAid workers, are doing very good work in Afghanistan. As it is for our soldiers, it's in difficult and dangerous circumstances. And on this occasion, he was provided with force protection measures by the International Security Assistance Force. In the normal course of events, those arrangements will be reviewed, as they are after any such terrible incident. It's also a suggestion that a child suicide bomber has been used by the Taliban in this matter. The use of children in such a way is contemptible, and I again express my revulsion and horror at such use of children. I'm happy to respond to your questions.
Have you ever just discussed the possibility of the use of Cocos for strategic purposes by the US with your regional neighbours, and if not, why not?
Well, the reference to Cocos Island has emerged as part of the commentary that I've made in the context of the United States Global Force Posture Review and also the President's visit. And I made the point at the time in November, December of last year that it was very much a long-term possibility. I haven't had with my counterparts or, for example, recently with Kirk Campbell when he was here in Australia, I haven't had a detailed discussion about the nature of access, either naval or aerial, or the detail of any proposals or suggestions. It is very much down the track. It is not one of our three current orders of priority. As well, you might recall that earlier this year I released the progress report from our own Force Posture Review. That Force Posture Review, conducted and produced by Alan Hawke and Rick Smith, two former secretaries of the Department of Defence, refers to Cocos Island and refers to the need at some stage of upgrading the airfield facilities at Cocos Island. Again, that is very much a medium to long-term prospect. It's not one of our priorities at this stage. So in terms of our neighbours, our regional neighbours having consideration of Cocos, I've put that out there as part of my commentary. It's also contained in our own interim or progress Force Posture Review report that I received from Rick Smith and Alan Hawke earlier this year, and I'm expecting to receive the final report from them in the next week or so.
You said that the Cocos Island would have to be upgraded. Who would do that? Would it be Australia, or would you ask the United States to help?
Well, that is one of the issues that will fall for consideration. That has been referred to in passing. I can recall a conversation I've had with my then counterpart, Secretary of State Robert Gates, where I made the point to him that whilst we should view Cocos as a potential strategic asset into the future, there was significant upgrade work that would be required. But we haven't gone into the detail of that costing conversation, just as we haven't gone into the detail of what possible types of operation or types of aircraft or types of ships might be appropriate for joint access out of Cocos in the long term.
Would you expect a backlash from neighbours if joint access were to go ahead?
Well, no, because we've been very transparent about the way in which we have dealt with this matter. And that's why I say officials, commentators should not get ahead of themselves. When OSMIN was conducted in Melbourne in November 2010, then Secretary of State for Defence Robert Gates and I made public comments about the work we were doing on the United States Global Force Posture Review. The same occurred after San Francisco, and of course when the President was here in November last year, he and the Prime Minister announced the arrangements that we had made so far as the Marine Task Force group rotating out of the Northern Territory was concerned, just as we announced the greater access for US Air Force planes to RAF bases in the Northern Territory, and we announced the work into the future so far as naval access to HMAS Sterling on our western seaboard is concerned. So we have been transparent. At the time, you may recall that briefings were given to our regional counterparts, either in advance of or contemporaneously with the President and the Prime Minister's announcement. So we have been transparent about these matters. As a general proposition, of course, the work we're doing with the United States on its Global Force Posture Review is consistent with our long-standing approach that we regard the presence of the United States in the Asia-Pacific region, we regard an enhanced presence by the United States in the Asia-Pacific region as a force for peace, as a force for stability, and a force for prosperity. So we welcome very much the initiative that the Prime Minister and the President announced in November, and we also look forward to continuing the work that we are doing with the United States on this front, but we will continue to be transparent about these matters at the appropriate time. As I say, people should not get ahead of themselves.
Transparent, but have you had direct conversations with your neighbouring counterparts?
Not about Cocos, because we've made it clear publicly that that is not one of our three priorities. That is down the track. but I've made comments about Cocos. It's also, as I say, referred to in the Force Posture Review progress report presented to me by former Defence Secretaries Alan Hawke and Rick Smith.
Keep saying down the track. Can I get an idea of how long that track is?
No, our priority is bedding down the Marine Task Force rotational arrangement. That'll take place over a period of 5 or 6 years. Secondly, further work on greater access so far as United States Air Force is concerned to our RAF bases in the Northern Territory, and then subsequently greater naval access to HMAS Sterling, and the relevance of that, of course, is the rise of India and the rise of the Indian Ocean Rim as an area of strategic importance. Just our highest priority, our first priority, the Marine Task Force Group, that's on a timetable of 5 or 6 years from now until 2016, 2017. So I'm not putting a timetable on our consideration of Cocos, but that falls a long way behind the 3 priorities that I've referred to and the 3 priorities that we have made public for some time.
So when do you think you might have some detailed discussions with the United States about Cocos Islands?
Well, I'm not expecting any detailed discussions in the near future. We are focused, as I've said, on bedding down the implementation of the Marine Task Force Group rotating out of Darwin. As I say, Kirk Campbell was here last week. We did not have a conversation about Cocos. I'm not envisaging a conversation with my counterparts on Cocos Island for some considerable time.
What kind of geographical reach would a drone have from Cocos?
Well, I see that the speculative report in the Washington Post, which has been picked up here, talks about using a Global Hawk drone for maritime purposes. The Global Hawk drone for maritime purposes has not been built yet. That capability doesn't currently exist. So I regard that, frankly, as speculative. As I said overnight, we have not had a conversation with the United States at my level about what assets might be used in or out of Cocos. So I regard that as very much a speculative conversation.
Do you have concerns about the increasing use of drones by the US?
No.
Still on speculation, do you see that perhaps Cocos Island might one day replace the Diego Garcia, the US Army base?
Well, you're getting so far down the track that I'm not proposing to respond to that, but I do make this point. Diego Garcia is a United States base. We do not have United States bases in Australia or in Australian territories, and we're not proposing to. We either have joint facilities such as Pine Gap, or we have access to Australian bases or facilities by United States Army, Navy and Air Force. So there's no proposal for a United States base in Australia or in its territories.
Given to the attack on the aid worker, are there any implications for our mission in Afghanistan because of that?
Well, we have just under 20 AusAid and Civilian Corps workers in Orazgon province in Afghanistan and in Kabul, and they do very good work. As a general proposition, the force protection or the protection that is provided to them is provided either by Australian Defence Force personnel or by International Security Assistance Force personnel. On this occasion, it was provided by International Security Assistance Force personnel. We've been very satisfied with the level of force protection provided by the International Security Assistance Force, just as we have been satisfied with the force protection provided by our own Defence Force personnel. In the aftermath of any terrible incident such as this, there is always a review about the particular incident to see whether there are lessons to be learnt, but that'll take a bit of time. I'm not proposing to prejudge that. But as a general proposition, we've been satisfied and happy with the force protection that has been provided to our civilians in Afghanistan.